Okay, now I think we are actually live. Okay, so what shall we... Had some filler music on in the background here to fill the dead air. How you doing? There we go. Now I'm in here. Now you can hear me as well, right?
Yes, sir, I can do.
Okay, fantastic. So for everyone that's listening in through the Neo Tokyo Discord, keep in mind that if you're also watching the YouTube live stream and you want to speak, mute one. So we don't get echo. But we are live on YouTube right now. The link has been posted. On that link, you'll be able to see me give demos and pick my nose and other things like that. So be sure not to miss it.
Yes, I'm dropping that into the Auki AMA links thread also, just to make sure so we have everything in one place. There we are. And let's give people a few more minutes to just drop in, and then we'll get going.
Absolutely. I've tried this cool setup today where I've set up with 2 different phones, one on a tripod, so I should be able to give a really good live demo of the instant calibration. It's first time I try, so it's a live demo, if you will.
It's gonna be cool. Going to be very, very awesome. I'm very excited about seeing all this in action. I mean, last time we had a very good session as well, but this is more prepped and not as ad hoc as it was that time.
Hopefully. We've made some cool progress. The demo should look cooler. We've also spun up a bigger networking node this time. But again, we don't know how many people it'll tolerate, so let's see if we can crash it again this time.
Yeah, fingers crossed. What's the goal? Do you want it to crash or not to crash?
I think it's more fun if it crashes, right? Because then we did something.
Yeah.
If it doesn't crash, well, yeah, I'll be proud, but I won't be entertained.
See.
The people responsible for the uptime, they're in Asia and probably nervously asleep right now. I warned them that, hey, I'm gonna crash the beta cluster today. So at least they've been warned.
Nice. I mean, so is the whole dev team stationed in Hong Kong or?
No. So we are a fully distributed team, but with 2 large concentrations in Hong Kong and in Taiwan. So we've got 2 clusters in Taiwan and Hong Kong. I'm calling in from Barcelona today, where we have one of our co-founders is based out of here, and we also have team members in Portugal and in Poland and in Sweden, the UK, we're Bulgaria and Greece, we're all over, Czech Republic, Honduras, the US.
It's always inspiring to hear those stories of fully distributed teams making it big. So I appreciate that.
I think one of the really great things about COVID and people learning that it's okay to work from home is that you can also start recruiting remotely in a different way. And when you can recruit remotely, you can actually get the best talent instead of the best available talent near you. And that's made a huge difference for us, that we can look internationally, go through candidates over a bunch of different places and pick the one that we want the best, instead of like, let's hope there's someone within half an hour driving distance from where we happen to be.
Yeah. I mean, I know, I'm not sure if you've heard, but here in Sweden, there's been a lot of effort since COVID as well to actually make the bigger corporations go fully remote as well, just so they don't have to have the business trip and stuff to save on the climate, to help Sweden reach the climate goals as well.
Swedes drive a lot of cars, so I don't think it's a bad initiative to make people stay home.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a very good idea. And if we can also lessen the whole footprint when it comes to travels around the world for business meetings, that's also very good.
It's I mean, it kind of takes us into the topic of metaverse and the changing behaviors of how people are starting to live out their lives more and more online, and how that may impact our economy and what kind of opportunities and challenges this creates. So the first opportunity that we'll be talking about today, or have been talking about, is of course the opportunity to recruit better teams, which is a great new thing that wasn't possible before, and something that is worth thinking about when you look at startups in general. That startups now that embrace remote work have an opportunity to build stronger teams than startups did even 4 or 5 years ago, when remote work wasn't so widely spread. And I think that makes startups more competitive. So that's that's in the good side of the ledger of everything that's happening right now.
For sure. All right, I think we should probably get started, because I know time is of the essence here as well if we want to go through a lot of stuff. So yeah, welcome everyone to another AMA here in the AMA booth with me, Felix. You know me as one of the leaders here of the AMA team. And today we are guested by Nils from Auki, who has come back to do a follow-up AMA from, it was around New Year's, right?
Yeah, around New Year's. It's been almost 2 months.
Yeah, exactly. Where he was actually the first person to join us from an external source to our AMAs here near Tokyo. So it's a lot has happened since then. We don't have the daisy chaining of Google Meets anymore, which is preferable to not have. Yeah, a lot has happened on our side, and well, we're here today to see what's happened on your side as well. So feel free to introduce yourself and let's get cracking.
So I'm Nils. I'm the CEO of Auki Labs and Matterless, two companies that are trying to make the most out of AR being just around the corner. So Auki Labs, that I'm here to talk about mainly today, we are a protocol that tries to solve the problem of positioning. Like, how do you allow digital devices to very precisely know where they are in relation to each other, so that you can have a persistent AR metaverse? And this may sound confusing, because you may think that, like, oh, can't you use the GPS for that? So that's one of the things that we'll be talking about today. But also, I'm the CEO of Matterless, that makes virtual pets. It's a digital companionship company with the goal of making people feel more connected to themselves, to the people around them, and hopefully to the world at large. And I'm very excited to be back here to do another AMA with you guys. Last time I was here, we chatted for almost 2 hours, if I remember correctly. I had a really good time. And since I think there are a couple of new faces here, if you don't mind, Felix, I'd kind of like to start from the very beginning.
For sure. I was actually about to ask you to do a quick summary of what we went through last time as well, and just present everything that you want to present.
Yes. So for those of you that are listening on Discord, I'm going to give you a little bit of fair warning here. I do a lot of gesticulation and stuff where I try to explain things with my hands. So if you're watching on YouTube, it might be easier to follow. But okay, what is Auki Labs trying to do? It turns out, the slight echo is because I've actually got Felix on a speaker here so that we can capture that for the live stream. I'm a bit of a boomer and didn't get the correct setup. But thank you for the warning about the echo. I will lower the volume. So, positioning. Today, your phone, when it wants to understand where it is, pings a GPS satellite, or it gets information from the GPS satellite and telling you where you are. But if you go into Google Maps or something like this, in fact, I can do that right now. Typically, the position you get is not very precise, right? It's placing me now within 50 to 100 meters of where I actually am. And the reason that it has that poor kind of accuracy is because I'm indoors. A lot of people don't know this, but GPS actually requires line of sight to be able to position people. And that means that even though it might intuitively seem like, hey, shared AR is something that's very easy, just check in with a GPS and establish where people are, in reality, that really doesn't work at all. And any AR project that focuses on using the GPS is, in my humble opinion, just barking up an impossible tree. The idea that you can build AR on top of GPS is about the same as the idea that you could build a social network on top of the fax machine. It's just, it's not going to happen. It can't happen. It's impossible in the universe. So, what are people doing to try to mitigate this? Well, a couple of small companies, you may have heard of these: Apple, Google, Microsoft, Meta, Snap. They're all trying to create something called a digital twin. What's a digital twin? A digital twin is essentially a one-to-one copy of the real world in 3D, that the idea is a device will be able to use this copy and compare it to what it's seeing through its camera so that it can establish where it is. Now, this is super intuitive because that's how you and I actually navigate in real life, right? We look around, we look at where we are to try to establish where we are. But from a technical point of view, doing this, it's quite challenging. In practice, if you look at the leaders of shared AR today, Niantic with Pokemon Go, they recently released a beta that allows other people to copy their technique. And the way it works is, you can say there are two ways of calibrating AR. One is the really old school way, where you have a physical marker, like a business card like this one, something like this, that the application has been pre-trained to recognize, but not only recognize, it's been pre-trained to know the physical dimensions of this object. So you can then use basic trigonometry. When the object looks small, it's far away. When it looks big, it's close. But for that to work, you need to know in advance what the object looks like, and you need to know the physical dimensions of the object. The benefit of this approach is it's very, very accurate, but the drawbacks are pretty obvious. With that system, you have to either go to where the marker is, or you always have to bring the marker with you. So that's not super helpful. So the digital twin people, they started trying to instead compare ad hoc maps of the world. So what happens if you try to do shared AR in Pokemon Go is you create a room and your friend scans your QR code, and now you get some instructions on both of your phones. So it says stand next to each other, shoulder to shoulder. Okay, so we do that and we press next. And then it says point your phones at the same object in the distance. Okay, so we do that and we press next. And then it says please start walking slowly around the object together in the same direction, right? And now we do that. And then, no joke, feel free to test this for yourself. I don't want to be slandering anybody. Half a minute later, you'll get calibrated, and typically only with a couple of centimeters of precision. If you're unlucky, maybe 15 centimeters of precision. If you're lucky, about an inch. But it's not very precise. It takes half a minute, and everyone has to join at the same time, which is a huge blocker, because what this means essentially is technically a moment in AR cannot go viral. I want you to think about that for a little bit. A moment in AR cannot go viral. With a technique that requires everyone to join at the same time, whatever it is that's happening in AR has no mimetic transfer vector. Like the app itself can go viral, sure, but the specific thing that's happening, the specific thing that people are looking at, the specific moment in time cannot spread virally. But in April of last year, we invented the world's first instant AR calibration technique. And I am gonna try to give a live demo of that now with my cool new setup here. Let's see if I can do this. Go to studio mode here. Demo. Okay, so can you already see? I'm gonna turn off studio mode. I'm not cool enough to use that actually. I'm gonna go over to demo mode here, and we're looking over on this phone here first. And I am also going to join this session remotely over web. I will let you guys join this in a bit as well. So what we should be able to see now is on the phone here, which I'm moving, you should be able to see on the blue screen in the middle that I'm moving the phone. Is everyone seeing this? Felix, are you seeing this?
Yes, I can see.
Great. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'll spawn a little asset here, a clock, that we can look at both in the web and on the phone. And you can see that these clocks are actually synchronized. Do you see this?
Right, yeah.
Cool. So before I show the instant calibration, I just want to explain a cool little thing that's happening right now. This web application that I'm in is a completely different application from the mobile application that's streaming. So these are actually two applications that only have in common that they're connected to the Aukiverse and they're communicating about position and content in real time, which is pretty cool. Now I'm going to take my other phone here and I'm going to take a completely different application, the Matterless application. Make sure that my pet is fed. Yes, very, very happy. Great. And I'm going to go into AR mode on this one, and I'm going to double check to see what's happening here. So, of course, this one is not calibrated in, so I don't see the clock over here. But if I bring up the QR code on this phone and I scan it, then I'm instantly calibrated in. And you can see now, if I hold the phones next to each other, that's what you see in the blue screen as well. So we got calibrated with very fine precision, actually. And I just ruined it. But you just saw me calibrate it, and let me hop in one more time. AR mode, so I should not be connected, and I go in and I connect. There we go. Here's the thing, I'm back in, right? So it was that easy to get back in. And another cool thing that I can do now is I can actually drop my pet from the Matterless app into the experience here. And it will appear on all of the devices as well. So we can see it here in the web client. And as I look close at it, you see me looking close at it. And the other phone sees it in the same place as well. And as I make the cat walk around, that's what we both see. And if I spawn another box on the table here, the pet is actually aware that that box is there. So if we wait long enough, we might see the pet choose to interact with this clock. So what have I shown you here? I've shown you two devices across applications instantly calibrated into the same space, right? So the phone that I have here that I'm shaking around, this is Matterless, but Matterless can still see the clocks. It's still synchronized with everyone else. And the other phone, the one that I'm shaking over here, this is not Matterless, but it can still see the Matterless pet. Not a problem. In fact, I'm just running a little debugging application here that can show us the kind of precision we got, right? So this debugging app is trying to render a phone where my phone is, not with computer vision, but based on where the phone is telling me that it is, right? So we can actually do this, like if I block it with a hand, oh sorry, I have hand occlusion on, let me turn that off, human occlusion. So there we go. You can see it through my hand, right? So there's no trick here. Does that make sense? So we are communicating in real time, fine millimeter precision movements. And we are sharing content across different devices, which I think is pretty damn cool. In fact, I think it is the first live demo of an actual metaverse, not a blockchain game, but an actual metaverse. What do I mean by an actual metaverse? I mean that it's a real-time protocol for interoperable spatial interaction. We had 3 different applications watching this. We had a web application, or a VR application, if you like. We had 2 different mobile applications. All 3 of them are running on completely separate code bases. The only thing they have in common is that they're connected to the Aukiverse and they can see each other. And this means that we have invented not only like a very cool interoperable protocol, but we've made it possible for the first time for a moment in AR to go viral.
And also, just to add on to that, I mean, one of the cool things you mentioned last time and very, very much emphasized was the fact that Auki is completely independent of geographical or geospatial coordinates, right?
Yes. So no GPS was harmed during this demo, or used, in fact, at all during this demo. We did not use the GPS for anything here, nor did we do a 3D scan of the environment. I can do this demo anywhere in the world where it's never been done before. It doesn't require any understanding of what the world looks like. In fact, what we figured out, the big philosophical difference that we have between the difference between us and Apple and Google and Microsoft and so on and so forth, is we realized the device doesn't need to know exactly where it is in the world. It only needs to know where it is exactly in relation to the other devices that it's sharing content with.
And that is happening through the connection when you scan the QR code, correct?
Yes. So what happens when you scan the QR code is that it tells you which AR layer you should connect to, like essentially like which channel are you connecting to. And then there's also another hidden piece of information in there that allows the phone to figure out where it is in relation to the other phone.
All right, that's sounds very simple, but it's not super simple. I also recall you mentioning last time that, well, you have done something that you are questioning what nobody else has done, which is kind of cool. Yeah. Anything else you want to continue demonstrating or show off? Or
I want to tell you what it is we're going to do with this, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
What are we going to do with this? So essentially, Auki Labs as a company is going to go through 3 distinct stages, where the first stage is the stage where we're in now. Like literally now, this is live now. People are building on top of this technology now.
Yeah.
In stage 1, we are an AR toolkit that just makes life easier for AR developers, right? We provide a couple of very useful features like instant calibration, but also interoperability, but also hand reconstruction, but also collaborative rendering, just a bunch of things that we hope will be a no-brainer include for anyone that does anything in AR. And I really mean for anyone that's doing anything in AR. The only reason why you wouldn't use this tech is if you think that for some reason your AR does not benefit from being visible to many people at the same time. If that's what you're doing, I'm just questioning what you're doing with your time. But if somehow you've come up with an AR use case that really does not benefit at all from other people being able to see what you see, then sure, then Auki is not for you. But for anything else, Auki is a good fit. And in stage 2, something very interesting happens. And this is related to the digital twin. Today, Apple is driving around a car in San Francisco with a LiDAR rig, scanning the outside of all the buildings, so that in the future, people with an iPhone can do AR based on the buildings they see, right? Now you might ask, like, oh, why not just do a collaborative 3D scan with, all of the cameras that Apple has out in the world, or all of the cameras that Niantic has out in the world? And the simple answer is it's very hard to do if the devices that are scanning don't know exactly where they are, right? Because if there's up to a 50-meter error in where we are placed, not to mention like the up and down and the rotation and whatnot, it's very hard to take 2 different 3D scans made at different times or just from different devices and merge them into one 3D scan. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? But as I demonstrated to you live today, we can get devices calibrated within millimeters of precision from each other, meaning that they can, in real time, collaborate to build up a 3D model. Now that's already pretty cool. But what we will do after that in stage 2 is that we will print over 1 million physical QR codes that we call lighthouses that you can put up in the world that act also as calibration points. And you'll be able to own these calibration points as non-fungible tokens. I know, crazy. It's not an image of a monkey. It's not even a digital asset. It's a physical asset that you can own as a non-fungible token. And why would you want to own one of these as a non-fungible token? Well, every time any Aukiverse app uses your QR code to calibrate into the world, you will get a fee for that. And to make that possible, what we realized is, okay, we're going to provide the Aukiverse software as a service to all the companies that sign up with us in stage 1, but we will make them pay us software as a service in our token. In fact, we will only accept our token. We will not accept USD as payment for running the protocol. You have to pay us in our token. And this allows us to also use the same token to reward people that help us build up the digital twin or help us host the infrastructure. For example, the networking node that we just connected to in Paris for this demo, which we'll connect to again in a bit, all of us, and see if we can crash it, and we'll take an Aukiverse selfie later. You could host that machine yourself with some spare computation power. It's not very intensive, and you can earn tokens from helping us host the decentralized backend. But the really cool thing that we can do with it is we can start offering all of the apps that use our SDK tokens in exchange for the data they generate towards the digital twin. So we will give them the option to sell us data about the digital twin so that we can collaboratively build up a digital twin. So you can ask yourself, what is going to map the world faster, Apple's LiDAR cars or a couple of thousand crypto enthusiasts that are going around mapping the world? Or even more likely, not even crypto enthusiasts, but just people playing stuff in AR, right? Yeah. That are going around looking at the world for whatever reason they're looking at the world. And the app developer, provided they have the consent from the end user, can get rewarded by the Auki Foundation for sharing this data, and can also choose, if they want, to pass those earnings directly to their consumers, to their users. So it's not only a technical advantage that allows us to do a collaborative digital twin, but a financial advantage that allows us to do a collaborative digital twin. Because I think it will be very difficult for a publicly listed company like Apple, Google, or Microsoft to start offering Apple Coin for you to contribute to a digital twin. So in stage 2, essentially what we're doing is we are printing out these lighthouses, giving them to the community, and allowing the market to figure out where do they want access points, right? And because they're NFTs, you can try to be smart about where to place them, predict where there will be traffic coming in the future, and help us map out the digital world. And the really cool thing with a lighthouse is, since we know exactly where a lighthouse is relative to another lighthouse once it's been properly calibrated, if I'm on a Monday 3D scanning one part, and on a Tuesday you're 3D scanning another part, but both of our 3D scans included lighthouses that knew where they were in reference to each other, we can still collaboratively create a digital twin, even though we're not even doing it at the same time.
That is great. That is taking out the whole syncing aspect you mentioned before, right? We're decoupling synchronization with this completely.
What this will allow us to do is essentially crowdsource the data that Apple, Google, and Microsoft are trying to manually collect. And I think that's very, very powerful. But also, we will allow the app developers to choose if they really want to contribute this data or not. And we will, give them the opportunity to be rewarded for this data. It's not just that they opt in to use our software, but we'll pay them in our tokens, which means at the very least they're getting a discount for a service that they want to use anyhow. But if they're generating a lot of data towards the digital twin, that might even be the main way that they monetize their application. So you could, for example, imagine making an AR treasure hunt application that's connected to the Aukiverse that keeps asking our API, hey, where do you need the world to be scanned? And wherever the Auki API replies, like, hey, we need someone to go scan over there, then your app can just create some contrivance, place some treasure over there so that your users will go and start scanning. And that way you made money. So
for sure,
stage 2 of Auki Labs is the creation of a collaborative digital twin. And then finally, in stage 3 of Auki, we're hoping to have an SDK that is quite ubiquitous, not only installed in AR apps, but a lot of different apps that have cameras and may not even use cameras at all. And in the last stage, here's the really big bet. We actually don't believe that digital twin is the final word in positioning. I think Apple, Google, Microsoft are wrong in pursuing it. I think long term, it's going to be something like ultra wideband triangulation. So that's what we're building for our stage 3. We're building a peer-to-peer mesh network between all of these connected devices that will allow them to do peer-to-peer positioning using ultra wideband. So in stage 3, we can imagine, Felix, that you're on Instagram 10, 15 years from now, and you're not seeing as many ads as you used to because Instagram has installed the Auki SDK, let's say, right? And because they've installed the SDK and you have the app open, your ultra wideband chip is also open and collaborating with the people around you that need positioning. And Instagram gets paid for the time that you sit with the ultra wideband chip open. So it becomes an alternative way of monetizing attention. Instead of showing people ads, you can just borrow their hardware.
Yeah. Which is a more passive way of using or having the users contribute to the finances and upkeep.
I've gotten some questions here from the community that I just want to address if you don't mind. So I got one question here. I want to put one at the most photographed actual lighthouse in the world, very busy place or park. Yeah, I mean, if you know where you think there's going to be traffic, that could be a great place to put up a lighthouse, definitely. And then Goalie Tom asks, why would it be hard, for example, Apple to motivate people with an Apple coin? Well, I believe it will be hard for them because they're a publicly listed company and the value of that company needs to accrue in their stock. So if they issue a digital asset that can accrue value instead of their stock, that could cause a big fall in their stock value, which is a very big price for them to pay to take such a big bet. I think it would be hard for a publicly listed company to try to issue such a coin. I could definitely be wrong about this. Maybe Apple will just copy us immediately. But I don't think it will be easy for them to do so.
We have another question from New Tokyo itself also. It's like, it's about ISPs and stuff. Is that something that Auki will work together with, or are ISPs even relevant for the Aukiverse?
We don't know if ISPs will be relevant to the Aukiverse because the ISPs don't necessarily provide any of the hardware here, right? So our philosophy is peer-to-peer calibration, peer-to-peer positioning, and ISPs are not peers.
Yeah, makes sense. We have another question as well, kind of related to it, and that is about Helium network. Is that something you would find is relevant to use potentially then?
Absolutely. We are very inspired by the Helium network. I think what they're doing is very, very cool. We're studying them very closely to try to learn from what they have done well and the things that maybe did not go so well for them. And in the stage 3 future that we envision, we will also want hardware out in the world. And maybe one of the ways that we could get that hardware out in the world would actually be to partner with Helium and make sure that the Aukiverse-enabled ultra-wideband chips are installed in a next generation of Helium router. That we have definitely started looking into partnering with other hardware manufacturers, but we actually have our own hardware team at Auki as well. We have a head of physical products based in Hong Kong with many years of experience with electronics and manufacturing over in China, who is already building our first prototypes of ultra wideband hardware stations that you'll be able to have in your home.
All right, that sounds really good. Very interesting. So what stage would you say that would be in? Is that in a stage far down the road, or is that upcoming?
So yeah, ultra wideband triangulation is the third stage of our company. I think like economically, it doesn't make sense to try to like go too far ahead into the future, right? Because getting to where we need to be in stage 3, it's going to cost tens of, if not hundreds of millions of dollars more than we have today, right? Like it's a long journey to get there. So what we want to lean into now is the real advantage that we have today, in that we have today a private beta of the Unity SDK that allows people to make AR apps with instant calibration. Like this exists today. People are building on it today. And in the meantime, we are taking some of our resources to get us to meaningful milestones when it comes to ultra-wideband, so that we are ready in stage 2 to be building it out in parallel to the digital twin. But right now, the hardware team is small. We're not spending a lot of money on it compared to how much we're spending on the actual, AR positioning. But what our true long-term bet really is, like where we think the future will be 20 years from now, is that there will be a peer-to-peer mesh network for positioning. And maybe it won't be ultra-wideband, but ultra-wideband is the first medium that is precise enough to make it viable. But it could end up being that, when we're ready to really start rolling this out, that something else like Bluetooth 6 is out already, or some other medium that turns out to be better than ultra-wideband. But ultra-wideband is the first medium that is good enough, or seems good enough, that is a possible candidate for something like this.
Okay, I see. Tying back also to the lighthouses and tech in that relation, I remember the last time we asked about what lighthouses would look like, and it would be essentially a simple QR code or like.
Yeah.
But once you get to the stage where hardware will be interesting as well, would potentially combining the lighthouses with hardware be a very
No, for sure. So our head of hardware has already been working on very cool designs that have both the QR code and the ultra-wideband chip and Wi-Fi and a hard drive for storing and sharing the local topography, like the 3D data, and even a solar panel to allow it to stay powered, with the idea that we try to hang these at the top of road signs and places like this where they have access to sunlight.
That's very cool. That would be super cool to see like how quickly the adoption would be for that. Something tells me you would hit the potential helium growth issue if that would be the case.
Maybe. I mean, it's definitely something we're looking at very closely. We're looking at helium. We're trying to learn from helium. They did a lot of things very, very well. Some things still waiting to see how well they turn out, but certainly there have been a few things that could have been done slightly better. So we look at them a lot, because I think, from a fundamental, almost philosophical view, they're doing something very similar, that they're trying to provide a fundamental utility in a decentralized way. And we want to do the same thing. We want to provide the fundamental utility of positioning. Like our goal is literally to replace the GPS. That's what we want to do.
Right. Awesome. Let's see. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Oh, someone says the echo is back, by the way.
Yeah, I saw that. I raised the volume so that people would hear you, but that was apparently not necessary. Sorry about the echo, SJC. I am a boomer. Please forgive me.
So, are there any considerations yet for atmospheric data and spatial collections, drones, blimps, aircraft control technology, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. Like any electronic device that can reason about its own position or movement in any way is interesting for us to calibrate into the Aukiverse. In fact, one of the really cool demo features that we are trying to build out this year is something that we call sensory transfer. What is sensory transfer? Well, let's imagine that an earthquake happened and there's a large pile of rubble, like 50 to 100 meters wide, this pile of rubble. And there are bodies and survivors under this rubble. And you might be able to see where they are on GPS, but that's not going to help you dig them out, right? Because GPS is not that precise. You want to know exactly where these guys are. And I'm not even saying like, oh, they'll be connected to the Aukiverse. That's how you'll find them. No, we're going to do something even cooler. Let's imagine 2 drones that are calibrated into the Aukiverse, flying overhead with heat cameras on. And with those heat cameras, they reconstruct into the Aukiverse in 3D where those heat signatures are, so that a first responder that's only wearing a HoloLens, not wearing any kind of heat goggles, right, only wearing AR glasses or even running around with a phone, can see where the heat signatures are, even though he doesn't have a heat camera. This is what we call sensory transfer, and this is one of the demos we want to have out this year. And that's one of the ways that we think about how to integrate things like drones, things like this, that might have sensors and modalities that are not accessible to normal people. So yeah, things like heat cameras that could then be reconstructed in the Aukiverse and made visible in augmented reality.
All right, cool. Let's see, do we have any other questions? Oh, well, we have one simple but difficult question to answer. What cool apps and games do you think, or will you see being built using Auki in the future? I mean, Matterless is a good example, but
yeah, obviously I'm a huge Matterless fan.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that are trying to build similar things to Matterless with the Aukiverse tech. I think for very natural reasons. Like I think what is cool about AR, right? The thing that's cool about AR is that it engages your sense of proprioception, and it allows you to recontextualize the real world. Like something that is super, super cool psychologically when you do something in AR is if I am looking at my table here, right? And my AR pet is there, and then I take my device away, the sensation that the pet is still on the table actually stays with me. And this gets even more real when you do this in a shared AR thing. So if I was playing with my pet and then my fiance is still playing with the pet, even though I'm not looking at it, that makes it even more change the way I perceive this actual room, this actual space, this actual table, right? And of course, this has a lot of potential for everything from storytelling to branding to, well, anything really, because you can connect with people at a both conscious and subconscious level at a way that you just can't through a display, right? Because even though you see AR through a display, you perceive it in the world. I hope that makes sense. And the reason we started building Matterless is essentially we realized what is the coolest thing you can do with this sense of embodiment, right? Well, you can create a sense of presence. And if you can create a sense of presence, you can perhaps amplify the sense of a personality and do something that really feels like it's real because you perceive it with your proprioception. So there, many others have had similar ideas. I don't think anyone else has like any actual in-game footage. Like I can give you a live demo of our pets with the instant calibration. I know there are other projects like Dogami that don't even have a screenshot. Cough, cough. But so I think many different companion apps will be built, but people are also looking at building things like racing games. And there's one game designer that is working on a really cool idea for a space exploration game where every lighthouse is a planet and you travel between the lighthouses to do missions. And this is a way for him to maximize the amount of data that he can capture. Right, so he creates this fun game where you fly around with your spaceship from lighthouse to lighthouse, traveling with passengers and doing space battle. But really, what his monetization strategy is to check with our API which lighthouses needs more data, and then create contrivances for the players to go there, right? So let's say, for example, you scan a lighthouse somewhere in New York, right? And then the app checks in with our API and says like, hey, I have a user that's right here. What is the most valuable thing that I can ask this user to do, right? And our API responds like, actually, if you can make him walk 50 meters to the left, we'll be very happy. Can you do that, right? And because there's another lighthouse over there. And then his app responds, absolutely. I will immediately automatically generate a quest for the user to go over to that location.
Oh,
so
interesting. And yeah, sorry to interrupt, but what does that quest then entail? Is it a reward in the form of tokens or something else?
So he can reward his end user however he wants, right? Like it might be a traditional game, it might be a blockchain game, I don't know, right? But people play games, right? And the idea is here that if we, like eventually we cannot pay individuals competitively for 3D scanning the world. There's just not enough money, right? But if you are playing an AR game already as an end user and you're happy to play this game, and the app developer can get something like $1 per square kilometer scanned, that might not bother you very much, because it's a way for them to monetize instead of showing you ads. And I think a lot of people would rather help build a digital twin than watch ads.
Yeah, for sure. I highly believe so as well, because advertisements are something that everybody's getting tired of nowadays.
Yeah, but outside games and entertainment, there's a lot of use cases for things like construction and architecture and maintenance, like a lot of actual enterprise use cases that are using AR already that would benefit a lot from having shared AR and the ability to do asynchronous AR, because that's a huge challenge today.
Yeah.
So I actually think that the enterprise use cases will be bigger than the gaming and entertainment and even consumer use cases in the short term. But of course, like an app that we're just waiting for someone to build is an app that allows you to buy AR NFTs that you can, place somewhere and show to people, right? Because one of the coolest things with shareable AR is you can actually show things off, not just as a profile picture on Twitter, but look at this. This is my NFT 3D sculpture. We can look at it at the same time. It's here in my living room.
That's dope. And to tie back to the reward system and scanning around lighthouses and such in the areas, is that something that will improve the digital twin over time as more and more people do it, or will there be severely diminished returns as a scan has been performed once, for example?
There is a little bit of diminishing returns. So the unit that we measure success in stage 2 of the company is a very funny unit, right? It's camera hours per meter per year, right? So camera time per area per time, right? Because it's not valuable to us to have 1 million people looking at the same place all the time. That doesn't generate new data, right? So things change, move around, things deteriorate. So there will be need to maintain a digital twin. You don't just scan it once, which is why I think our approach is also better than Apple, Google, and Microsoft's approach, because instead of having like one app that goes around to try to scan things, we can, in a successful scenario, have many, many, many apps that are connected to our protocol that help repair the digital twin as well, right? So one of the key parts, like the end game of stage 2, is having this Tinder for mapping rewards API, essentially, that lets the apps know what rewards are available to them nearby based on where the digital twin is incomplete or we suspect it needs repair.
Oh, well, that sounds very, very interesting.
I think that's the easiest way to describe it, right? That the thing that maintains the health of the digital twin is a Tinder for mapping rewards API.
Yeah, and that would essentially then be the entry point for defining those quests that you mentioned just a second ago, right?
Yeah. So the API tells the app, here's some data we need, right? And then the app can be programmed to respond to that and create some contrivance to make users go there, or even just tell the user, you could make an actual just digital twin repair app, right? That gives people the tokens directly, right? Someone could actually make the app that just checks with our API, where does the digital twin need to get repaired? And it does this with a nice UI that encourages people to go out and do it, and they connect their own wallet and they capture the rewards themselves. I think that might, like in the early stages of stage 2, I think that might be quite interesting. But in the later stages of stage 2, I think it'll be less interesting, because eventually, eventually token prices stabilize and it's not a speculative asset, and you can really count, what am I getting per hour for scanning? And at that point, we don't want to become the Uber of 3D scanning. I think the best way to make people 3D scan is to give them something fun to do, not an economic incentive to do it. So instead, we give an economic incentive to the app developers to think of fun things to do that will generate a digital twin.
Makes total sense. And when it comes to scanning all over the world, are we only looking at X and Y, or are we also looking at the vertical dimension?
We're definitely looking at the vertical dimension. Like, that's one of the big things that's missing with the current coordinate system, is that like GPS does not understand in any meaningful way what kind of height you're at. Like, I'm underground now, my phone does not know that, right?
And that is where the topology tech comes into to play, right?
Yeah. My dream is to give every cubic millimeter on Earth a unique describable address, right? So that you can tell a delivery drone, deliver this cup of coffee exactly to the windowsill, fourth window to the left on the 80th floor in this giant ass building in New York, right? You shouldn't have to give a delivery address like, here's my street address. Like, it's crazy if you think about it, right? And when we switch to delivery drones, why not? Have you ever seen pictures of like how fridges used to hang outside of windows back in the day?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm imagining like in the future, people will have drone delivery things hanging out their window. And because it makes sense, people will want the deliveries like straight to them. But we need a good address system for something like that. In fact, if I can do a quick back of the napkin calculation with you guys and like kind of explain why is this opportunity, and I don't mean like the Auki Labs opportunity, I mean like the opportunity of trying to solve positioning. Why is positioning such a big deal? Why are these companies spending so much money on it? Here's a fun, numbers just to get things for scale here. If you take every blockchain engineer that made a contribution to any blockchain project last year, you would still have fewer engineers than work at Microsoft, right? That's one thing to keep in mind. And fewer engineers than work at Facebook, fewer engineers that work at Apple. Like, any one of these companies have more engineers than all of blockchain combined, right? Any individual one of these companies. And if you look at the companies that make digital twin, that have made any kind of reasonably good tech with digital twin in the last 3 years, they have all been acquired, right? Like every single one of them. And they're being acquired by these same big companies. Why are they acquiring these companies? Why are they spending so much money on it? Well, essentially, especially Apple, but also the others, but especially Apple, they believe that in the future, digital devices will not have displays. They will not have displays. Why will they not have displays? Well, if you could have persistent AR and you had AR glasses, then you can actually, the financial incentive for that becomes really great, because let's say, for example, the digital displays at Hong Kong subway, right? They only exist to show ads today. But as anyone who's, ever made an app knows, you get a lot more money for a personalized ad than for a non-personalized ad. In fact, you can, get 20 times more money. Whereas one VC, it told me in a call recently, you get infinitely times more money. But yeah, you get a lot more money for a personalized ad than a non-personalized ad. So if you grant me that you can get around 20 times more for a personalized ad, then in a world where there's persistent AR, you only need 5% of the population in Hong Kong to be wearing AR glasses for you to be making more money focusing on AR ads than digital display ads. Right? You only need 5% penetration, which is nuts, right? So very, very quickly, the financial incentives for advertising will move over to AR, which is one of the reasons I think AR is going to beat VR in the long run. And the other interesting thing is that, like, okay, today there are 4.5 billion people connected to social media, right? And the average person connected to social media spends around 2.3 hours a day or 820 hours a year on social media. And if we imagine that 15 years from now, let's say Apple is right, and AR is now the main way that people interact with the internet, period, right? And let's say 15 years from now, there will be 4.5 billion people connected in some way to a new positioning system. Doesn't even have to be AR, but they're connected to the new positioning system, right?
Yeah.
And let's say that they spend the same amount of time connected to this positioning system as people spend connected to social media today. And let's say that it only costs 1 cent per hour to be connected, which is very, very little. It's a fraction of what Facebook makes per hour on you being on Facebook.
Yeah.
That would still be $70 billion a year in just connection fees, right? Which is, on the same order of magnitude as how much money Apple makes on iPhones, right? And if you instead imagine that, okay, whoever builds this protocol, 15 years from now, they might be able to charge as much as the average American pays for internet today, right? If you really believe that the metaverse is going to replace the internet, then maybe you can toy with the idea that 15 years from now, the main protocol for the metaverse is going to cost about as much as the internet costs an American today, right? And if that's the case, Felix, then we're looking at over 3 trillion with a T in connection fees alone, right? So spatial computing is a multi-trillion-dollar market opportunity. And all of the biggest companies in the world have that as their, the biggest tech companies have this as what they see, here's where the world is going. In fact, as much money as Facebook is spending on metaverse, quote unquote, they have spent more and will continue to spend more on spatial computing.
Okay, yeah, makes total sense. I think that was a lot to take in. But yeah, you really run some very solid arguments there, that's for sure.
I've got a question here from Slime24. He says, I see a ton of white label tech applications. Yeah, that's the point. We don't make applications. You make the applications on top of our tech. On the monetization through ads side, given the rise of privacy complaint regulations, any idea how that would work in this context? Yes. So first of all, Auki Labs as a company, we don't store any information about where you are, and we are not going to monetize any information about where you are. That's just not a part of our business model. That being said, we can't necessarily stop other app developers using our tech from using your data to monetize it. We can't stop people from doing that, but we can try to create enticing incentives and alternatives to monetize people in a different way than storing their data. But ultimately, these privacy concerns boil down to how well the app developers communicate about consent with their end users. But Auki Labs as a company, we are not storing, or we're not going to store, any of the information about who goes where.
Awesome. I mean, that's very reassuring for everyone when comparing to the big fan companies and such, and that collect so much data nowadays.
I hope that people will see that a peer-to-peer protocol that is collaboratively built and is not built with the mission to be a surveillance capitalist business, it's a much more pleasant future to live in.
Yes. So we are running out of time here. I know that you mentioned that you wanted to do the
Oh yeah, let's take a big selfie
AR
together.
PFP. Yeah.
Let's see if we can try to crash the server. Let's do this. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Let me get ready. See if we can do this. Da-da-da. So where should I send the link to do this?
I mean, if you want to include people from the stream, you can send it there, and you can also send it in the links chat that I sent in the Discord.
I don't want to send it in the YouTube because this is not going to be like, this is a live thing. It will only work right now, right? So I'm going to send you the link, Felix, and you pass it on where you think it's appropriate in the Discord.
Feel free to do so.
Okay, so I'm sending a link now, 29524. Let me click this link as well. Did you get it?
Yes, I did.
Okay, before you share this link, let's just explain to people what's going to happen. I am going to screen share. Okay. Great. Okay, so I'm gonna go over and switch to my demo mode here. And great. So you should be able to see. Oh, I need to do one last thing here. Hold on. This needs to go in this browser window instead. And now, great. Okay, have you clicked the link, Felix?
I am not. I am doing that.
Okay, go ahead and click the link. And everyone else, just watch the stream for now, and Felix will show you how this is done. In fact, I'm going to show here. I'm going to start by taking my web client, and I'm going to swing around to the other side of the clock. And you can see that I see that clock up, that phone up there now. This is me in the browser. You see this?
Yes, I do.
Right. So if you swing around to the other side of the clock as well, I'll be able to see you. Now everyone understands how this works. Let's send the link, and they can come and be part of this selfie.
Yes, I am sending it in the chat now for everyone.
Let's make a cute little N here.
See, oh, whoa.
Yeah, here people are coming. Hello.
A lot of clocks and a lot of phones.
Yeah, a lot of clocks, a lot of phones. Let's see if we can crash this. But so far, we're still seeing people's movements in real time. So far, I'm still seeing the clocks as synchronized. So far, with all of these participants in, we're still doing all right. I'm starting to see lag in the browser now, where on the browser, the positions update a little bit slowly. Yeah, I think we're getting to a point where we're crashing it. I'll let you guys know next week at what point this node broke down. But remember here that the amount of participants that our main competitor, Niantic, can handle is maximum 8. And from the looks of it in here, we are upwards of 100 people in this room right now.
Yeah, currently listening in, we are more than 100 people. So I would guess that we are around 100 people in here.
Super cool. I think we have crashed it now, but yeah, that was really cool. But yeah, awesome. I think we've crashed it now. Thank you for helping me with that. I do not want to stop streaming. I want to switch to this mode. So a thing that's really cool with this is we're actually still sending the positioning information not in pure binary. So when we start sending this in pure binary, our capacity for people at the same time in the same space, like concurrent users in the same space, will go up by quite a lot. We're still sending very big JSON blobs, which means that the limitation that I think we ran into here for each individual client is actually downloading the information about all of these people at the same time. Because last I checked, it was about 2 kilobytes of data per device per second that you have to receive. But we're gonna get.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So
okay.
it seems like the server is still up, actually, because I see things moving in the background. So I don't know if we crashed it, but I think we ran into all of the individual devices' downloading limits.
Okay, that makes sense.
But I will have a full report later and see if we actually managed to crash this thing or not.
Yeah, sounds great. Keep us informed.
And yeah, now you've taken a selfie in the Aukiverse.
Yeah. Awesome. Anything else you want to end off with?
I will be in Barcelona this week at the Mobile World Congress. If any of you guys are going to be there, you can find me and have a cup of coffee with me. I'll be there. I'll be giving live demos, and I will also be streaming live on this channel throughout the week from the Mobile World Congress conference. Of course, if you found this interesting, please go to blackpaper.aukiverse.com to read more about what it is we're doing. I'll send the link in the YouTube chat. And also, if you want to keep up to date with what we're doing, you can go to discord.gg/Aukiverse, which is our Discord community, where you can ask us questions and interact with us during future live streams.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Nils.
Thank you, Felix.
Always a pleasure to speak to you.
Nice speaking to you guys. Thank you all for the questions. I really appreciate it. If any of you have questions that I didn't address, that I missed, or that you come up with in the middle of the night thinking about the future, send me a message on discord.gg/Aukiverse. I'm Brewed Sugar on there, and I look forward to chatting with all of you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. And yeah,